I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, January the 9th, where we've got a mud bog that's kind of holding up trade here, and it's really hurting both supply and demand because we've got record receipts, just huge runs in all your auctions to start the year out, as we're still trying to get rid of this huge calf crop that we had last spring. And we would have even more receipts if it wasn't so muddy, especially in Oklahoma, places like that. They're not used to having to deal with that much mud this time of year, and it's holding up receipts there. Even though they've got heavy receipts, they would have even more cattle going, but there would be plenty more demand for the cattle that are there and the extra cattle that we could have if the lot conditions in these feedlots and preconditioned yards and such were not so muddy. The wheat pastures are muddy too, and when you get that much bog out there in the wheat pastures, they end up tromping out a lot of that wheat that could be used later down the line for either graze out or to make a crop on. But just mud conditions, if it wasn't for the mud, we would have much better demand and heavier supplies. But let's look at the board on Tuesday. February live cattle futures up $2.10 to end the day at $125.30. April up $1.07 at $126.15. January feeder cattle up $1.62 at $147.62, and starting to be a pretty big disparage between what your spot feeder cattle contract is and what the cash market is. March feeder cattle up $1.55 at $145.45. But look back again at that January feeder cattle, our spot feeder cattle contract at $147.62. It's suddenly higher than any other traded month until August, which is at $150.70, which still seems quite undervalued if you think about what those green grass yearlings are going to bring coming off of our major grazing areas. Late in the summer like that, I promise you it'll be bigger than that. It's $150.70. It wouldn't be anything for that to be as high as $170, but just very undervalued right there. And we have seen, it's been well advertised that there's a lot of opportunity on the long side of the cattle futures, and I think some of your investors are starting to see that, as this is the second day of a big rush on the long side on your cattle futures. But look at fats for this week. We haven't seen any trade really break loose to speak of at all. We were thinking that we were going into this week going to be lower than after this board has responded like it did. Of course, it could be down just as much here mid to late week, but if it holds what it's got, we should get at least steady, if not gain a buck or two. But the only sales we've really seen is about 700 head. Few Nebraska sales, steady with last week for that part of the country at $122.50. Box beef cutout values on Tuesday's trade slightly lower, but huge volume, which is good. But choice cuts on Tuesday afternoon, $213.98 down 30. Selects down 95 at $207.26. That's a $6.72 choice select spread with 183 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings just for Tuesday's trade, and that is heavy. Slaughter is going pretty good so far this week, 237,000 through Tuesday compared to 235,000 the same week last year. Real-time index on Cattle Market Central for feeder cattle based on an 800-pound steer setting at 144.21, down just 9 cents from Monday, so holding in there pretty well. Look at some of your feeder cattle auctions on Tuesday. OKC West calf sale, only 4,000 head. Thought it would be heavier than that, but like I said earlier, it is muddy, wet conditions, kind of hard to get some of those cattle out that they might have sold otherwise. And also your sellers are looking around and they're seeing the big heavy receipts at all the auctions around the country, and they're thinking that maybe they'll hold off a little while. Whether that works or not, it's unseen yet. But calves in El Reno steady to $3 higher. Some of your fancy long wing, bigger consignments of uniform calves selling sharply higher, and we continue to see that, especially on steer calves. The people want the cattle. They're really driving for them if you get the conditions right, and a few of the guys that are not dealing with as much mud have the advantage where they can get in there and purchase those cattle. But Ozarks Regional Stockyards, West Plains, Missouri, 6,100 head there. That's in south central Missouri, not south central, but just north of the Arkansas border on the southern line there of Missouri in the rocks. But Ozarks, 6,100 head. That's a big sale for anywhere, but compared to 2 weeks ago there, steer calves steady to $4 higher, heifer calves $3 to $6 higher, and yearlings not well tested, which is not uncommon this time of year. Several individual quotes that I'll give you all over the country. Riverton, Wyoming, they can sell the calves up there, guys. 107 head of lightweight calves, steer calves weighing 496 at $198. Now that's scaring the heck out of 500 pounds and scaring the heck out of $2 a pound right there. Clarinda, Iowa, John Anderson and company up there, 58 head of 620 pound steer calves at $165.10. Philip the Giant had several top quotes that I could have pulled out. Instead, I just pulled this Cattle Market Central market report to show you the steer quotes right there on 3,500 head as of when I pulled this report. Might be more to sell there, but look at your top quotes on the heaviest tested weights. 474 head of 5-weight steers, average 551 at 180.96 on the average. That's all of them. That's not just what somebody thought was the top end. That's all your steer calves weighing in the 5s. Now on your 6-weight steer calves, there were 525 head of those go through the ring on the average at 156.66. That's very impressive. That would be impressive for one load of them, and not to count all the 6-weight steers that went through. 307 head of 7-weight steer calves, average 753 at 149.60 on the average. Look at Imperial, Nebraska. They had the longest string that we saw on Tuesday. 210 head in one whack, 792 pound steers at 146.75, and that is the market up there in the Northern Plains, guys. And then a quote that's very impressive that I missed on Monday. Sylvan Grove, Kansas, Sylvan Sales Commission Company. I call it the little market with the big prices there. 61 head of 825 pound steers bring $150.50. And that's your feeder flash for Wednesday.